DY Card Ladder is the industry leader in sports card data. We know what you want because Card Ladder was created by collectors for collectors. Card Ladder. Join the innovators, not the imitators.
Hey guys, Brian with Cajun Cardboard coming at you from the great state of Louisiana, and I have got a very special announcement and a very special guest today. My boss. Basically, we didn't even talk about this. You're my boss, Chris. I mean, I am an affiliate partner with Card Ladder, which is a nice way of saying that Brian in Louisiana works for Chris.
Well,
so thank you.
If that is true, then I would actually say that if that makes me your boss, then every collector in the hobby who uses Card Ladder is my boss. So you're just reporting you're just one step removed from taking the orders of every collector who needs everything in the app.
I am a constituent. I'm a slave to the Card Ladder value feature. So just like all of us are, right? We always want to know what the next one's going to sell for.
Yep.
And that it is what it is. But this video is not going to be about cards at all. This video, which you and I both talked about a little bit, we have not shared any information yet, right? Other than we put a whole bunch of data together. I'm going to lay this out there, but this video today is about basketball, not basketball cards. And so, Chris, I don't know. I know you don't look at the views on my stuff. When I do a basketball card video, I usually get 1,000 to 3,000 views. When I do a basketball video, I get like 50 views. I don't know if people just know I don't know what the hell I'm talking about or don't care about real basketball, or maybe all my viewers are cards only, but when they see me talking about basketball, they're like, I'm good, Cage. You can talk about that with your 20 friends, you know?
Yep. Nope. When we start talking sports rather than cards on the crossover, I get a DM I get a DM every time. It's like, just get to the cards. But I think this is important. I think this is an important muscle for us to train and develop and flex as collectors, because one day I'd like to see collectors have a seat at the general basketball discussion, the same way that other observers of the sport, whether it's analytics-based people or whether it's reporters or whether it's people who cover the business of the sport, but not necessarily the sport itself. There's lots of seats at the table to talk about sports. I'd love if collectors, if one day we could be at the level where we have a seat at the table of the basketball discussion.
Did you ever watch Vacation, the original Vacation with Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo?
I wouldn't be able to quote anything from it, but yeah, okay. I've watched it.
I'm about to quote it. Okay. We're on a quest. That's what Chevy Chase said when it was time to shut it down and Wally World wasn't open. He's like, no, well, I'm on a quest. I'm on a quest. And so our quest, and it may be a fool's folly, but we're going to try to, in order, with an overwhelming amount of data, minutia, try to determine the all-time historical top 10. We talk about it all the time. You know, most people know their personal opinion on the top 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's your GOAT? Who's my GOAT? We even hear the term Rushmore, which I think is 4, right? We're going to go 10 deep, man. But we're going to tease the people. We're not going to give it to them right away. This video today is just Kobe versus Duncan. Why Kobe versus Duncan? Because I think these two guys, Chris, like we talked about, played almost the same number of games, almost the exact same number of seasons, and their careers almost mirrored each other. Rookie in 96 for Kobe, rookie in 97 for Duncan. And so this really is an apples to apples comparison, despite the fact they played different positions. But we're going to throw a hellacious amount of data, digits, information, math, and then you are going to run wild with analytics. I'm going to ask a bunch of dumb questions, and you can kind of fill in the blanks and educate me and the rest of the old folks like me who don't, rely as heavily on the analytics stuff and the new measurements and the new metrics. But I think it's going to be a great video. We plan to do Kobe Duncan today. Maybe a week from now, we plan to knock out. At some point, there will be a Bird and Magic. At some point, there has to be a LeBron versus Jordan. At some point, there has to be maybe a Kareem Wilt, maybe a Steph Curry Jokic. No matter what, we're going to, at the end of this thing, pull it all back together. And then we're going to each give our top 10 in one video in order for the record for everybody to hear, for better or worse.
It's awesome.
Okay, that's it. Basketball only. A couple of caveats that I think we should mention. This is going to be very nuanced, very detailed, and it's not just ring counting, right? The one thing I cannot stand about sports is when people say, "Oh, he's got this many rings, he's the GOAT." We call it the Bill Russell argument, right? Is like Bill Russell's not the greatest basketball player ever, even though he's got the most rings, he's just not the best basketball player ever. And I'll go to my grave with that, right? So this is not just counting up rings. That's not what this is. How are we? Oh, we're so different. Yeah, that's another note that I wrote down. I think the reason that the people listening to this are going to have get so much entertainment out of it is because you and I are very, very different. I am very much grew up in the 80s, get off my lawn, eye test. You are very much, let me go to Wikipedia, let me check and see what AI says. Let me talk about this analytic measurement that I've probably never heard of. And so it's going to be a great dichotomy of different perspectives as it pertains to these two guys and every video going forward. I think it's going to be a great disparity in the difference in the way that we kind of analyze stuff. One more nuance, Chris, and I don't know how deep you got into this. I think it's important to look at an entire player's career, but I also think it's important to sort of put your finger on their prime years and how good were they at the peak of their powers. And so for the word prime, I chose 5 consecutive years. This is not a perfect science. And a lot of this stuff is not going to be a perfect science. And when it's not, we'll talk about it. Did you look at the prime years that I chose for Kobe and Duncan at all and mess with it? Or did you just prime years don't really matter? I want to see the whole big picture.
Oh yeah, no, I think prime years matter. I think career matters. And then I added, as I was preparing for the show earlier this morning, I added a third. I said title window years. So we'll get to those when we get to them.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay. So prime years is subjective. I just want to say that for Kobe, I chose, and it was hard, right? Because I wanted 5 consecutive years. For Kobe, I know this sounds crazy, I chose 05 to 2010. For Duncan, I chose much earlier, 99 to 2004. Their primes, from a statistical dominance perspective, from what I could see, don't even overlap at all. And again, it could be argued their prime could shift forward this many years, whatever. I mean, for LeBron, hell, it's going to be impossible. That was the hardest thing in the world, trying to figure out LeBron's 5 best years statistically. Alpha, we're going to talk about that. Okay, there's going to be some duplication of categories. I'm about to screen share some crazy looking deal, okay? So people don't get alarmed, don't get overwhelmed. Don't, the math nerds are going to be super excited. They're going to need a napkin. This is a lot of numbers that we're about to throw at the wall and see what sticks. But here's what we got. First question I think we got to answer, Chris, is Duncan a power forward or a center?
I would, right off the bat, defer to what the advanced stuff says, like whatever position that the box plus minus algorithm is going to assign to him. Because I'm not going to ever put a player just in a category because he's tall or he's short or whatever. It's about what do you do? Are you a distributor? You can be a guy like Jokic who's 7 foot tall, but you can very much play a role of a 3. And that's how he gets measured in a lot of these different ones. So for Duncan, I mean, I don't totally know. I would defer to what the metrics say, but I'm guessing because of how much of what he did was involved in rim protection and rebounding and in scoring in the paint. So he's probably a 4.5.
Yes. Well, here's the deal. I got the numbers, right? This is a very simple measurement. He played 25,000 and change minutes at power forward. He played 22,000 and change minutes at center. That's pretty damn close in my book. So 4.5 is awesome. I love it. He comes from, and Kobe does as well, he comes from an era where it was point, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. But those days are long, long gone. And guys like Tim Duncan, I think a guy like Tim Duncan unquestionably will be a center in today's NBA for sure. Because he didn't really shoot threes. And I don't think you'd have 2 guys that don't shoot threes. And Cleveland Cavaliers be a good example of how you could struggle if you have 2 guys that can't shoot 3 at your 4 and your 5. I don't think it matters for this analysis either. I honestly don't think it matters if Tim Duncan's a power forward or a center. Maybe it does when you start comparing him to centers or compare him to other power forwards, if there are any, but I don't think it matters for the purpose of this discussion. But it's an interesting topic of discussion that Steph Curry, is he a point guard or a shooting guard? It's another one of those deals. Some people are like, he's the best point guard ever. And I was like, oh, is he? Is he a point guard?
Is he even a point guard? Right.
Is he even a point guard? Right. So let's start with games played just to kind of knock out some of the beginning stuff. And these statistics are going to be lined up left to right. I've highlighted the player who has the advantage in a particular statistic. And then there's some explaining that we need to do. I've made some notes over here on the right. You are certainly, it's an open forum. You can chat through them as well. Kobe and Duncan played a shockingly close number of games, 1346 to 1392. Seasons played 20 to 19. Eras from 96 to whatever, from 97 to whatever. So that is straight up pure apples to apples, which makes this a great first episode. Regular season MVPs. Let's just get into it, right? You have created a McGill metric, right?
The McGill metric. That has a ring to it.
It's got a great ring to it. You like to combine regular season MVPs with finals MVPs, come up with a total, and almost use that as a poignant, a focused guide on your GOAT measurement, right? So regular season MVPs, Duncan has 2. Kobe Bryant has 1. Talk to me about that. How big of a deal is that? And then talk to me about the McGill metric. Just generally speaking, kind of reiterate your take on that and what you've created.
Yeah, and so that let me just get this spiel out of the way so that we never have to do it again in any future episode or whatever. But I mean, yeah, like this is going to be a spoiler, but my ultimate ranking is going to be the McGill metric. Which and I don't expect anybody to agree with that. I don't think that I just suddenly invented the way to rank players after the NBA had been around for 75 years and all of a sudden I come along and I have the right way. I'm not saying that I do. All I'm saying is it works for me.
Yeah.
But the McGill metric is simply this. In a nutshell, I believe there are 2 opportunities during every season for a player to prove that they are the best player. One opportunity happens by winning regular season MVP, and another opportunity happens by winning finals MVP. So a player has 2 chances. Now, is team success a part of both of those awards? Yes. Is team success more a part of finals MVP than regular season MVP? Yes. Is it unfair that finals MVP didn't exist until the 1969-70 season? So players who played in the 50s and the 60s didn't have a chance to win 2 MVPs, only had a chance to win 1 per season. Yes. But there are rebuttals to all that stuff too. You know, during the 50s and the 60s, there was like 11 or 12 teams. So guys were only playing against 11 other teams or 9 other teams, depending upon the size of the league at the time. Today, they're playing against 29 other teams. So basically back then it was 1 conference. Now we have 2. Basically back then it was like 1.5 divisions for some of those years. So you look at it and you say, okay, when the league felt that a finals MVP was merited, it gave one out. And I think that's a pretty good proxy for determining when one was deserving. But if people push back against that, and I agree, I'm not saying my method is perfect at all. But that's it in a nutshell, is this idea that players have 2 chances every season to prove that they're the most valuable player. And some people push back and say, well, look, it's subjective. It's voters who are voting on both these awards. It's not metrics. It's not objective. And that's true. But I think that's actually, there's a fairness in that, because today when analytics and metrics are so dominant, players are optimizing for that. Teams are optimizing for it. 30 or 40 years ago, they weren't optimizing for it. The criteria of what made a player great was different. Players optimized more for that. So I actually like the voting as a way to sort of control for the change in what teams and the sport itself valued. Okay, so that's the pitch in a nutshell. I believe there's 2 chances every year for a player to prove that they are the MVP, which I'm using as a proxy, which I'm using as what the word best means. Yeah. 2 chances every year, total them up. That's how I get my GOAT list.
That's your McGill metric.
Yep.
McGill MVP metric. That is even more M's. It's like an alliteration, big time. Okay, so based on the McGill metric, we've got Tim Duncan with 5 total MVPs, 2 regular, 3 finals MVPs, and Kobe with 3. So a pretty noticeable advantage for Duncan there. Crowdsourcing, you talked about it, right? We can both agree that MVP voting is not a perfect metric. In fact, you probably would love to scream it from the mountaintop this year because your MVP is not going to win the award, even though you and I could probably agree. He was certainly the MVP of the league. The narrative is strong with the young man coming out of Oklahoma City. So he's going to win the MVP. And that's where crowdsourcing and MVP voting can get a little bit skewed. And that's how dudes like Kobe end up with 1 in his entire 20-year career. 1 MVP for Kobe in his 20-year career. How many should Jordan have had? How many should Kobe have had? How many should LeBron have had? There's a measurement for that. And it's called MVP shares. Okay, so let me pull this up. I know you're familiar with it. I just got more familiar with it. Okay. And let me just real quick read an MVP overview, an MVP shares overview, and why I think this is a great measurement, maybe even taking the McGill MVP thing to another level. MVP shares represents a player's percentage of the total votes received for a most valuable player award in a given season, or a cumulative sum of those shares across a player's career. So essentially, there's two ways. You can measure it per season, like he got 50% of the votes, that's 0.5 this season. But if you take your 0.5 and the next year you got 0.4, the next year you got 0.3, and you add those up, that's 1.1. You can see how when you accumulate those, that's a pretty damn cool measurement for how many, how relevant was your player across a given span of time. In this case, 2 decades. How many MVP votes did they accumulate over a 20-year period from thousands of votes, right, collected? And so as the voters change, as the narrative changes, as their teammates change, as their statistics change, as their age changes, I think it's a great way to measure. And so I really like this idea of MVP shares. Who do you think is the all-time leader in MVP shares before I share this? I'm putting you on the spot. I've got a bunch of trivia, by the way. I'm going to throw it at you.
Let's go. Well, look, I mean, we can use some basic logic here, some inductive reasoning. This is an award that's going to reward players who play for a long time at a high level. It's kind of like the NASCAR problem. Like, is it like my favorite NASCAR driver was Matt Kenseth. He won a championship without, I think, winning any races, or he won very few. He just always finished in fifth, just fifth. And the sport hated it so much that they implemented a playoff that put a lot more emphasis on winning races rather than just a guy who just is consistently very good, so that the guys who occasionally are great get rewarded. So this is a type of metric that's going to look at longevity. So somebody who finished like third in MVP voting for 10 straight years but never won is going to look better in this award than somebody who won 2 MVPs but they were only great for 2 years and they dropped off a cliff. So it's going to reward longevity. So I think you're going to see guys like LeBron, you're going to see guys like Kareem, you might even see guys like Malone and Stockton, and even some of those guys who played for a really long time are going to be high on this list.
You did great. Okay, so in order, start to finish, I've got it on our screen here, right? LeBron won. Would you be surprised to know that in significantly fewer seasons, Michael Jordan is second? And those two guys aren't really close to anybody else. Kareem is next with 6.105, which is shocking because he won 6 MVPs. So I would have guessed Kareem. I would have guessed it would have been LeBron and Kareem far and away, because Kareem played for like 8 decades. But Jordan sneaks in there with all of his MVPs, of course. And obviously he had a bunch of runner-ups and seconds and thirds. So this is a great way, to sort of measure greatness over a long period of time. Not necessarily how many years you were the greatest, but how many years you were in the conversation as the best in the world. And so by this metric, you can see, here we go. And this is why we're doing the video. Tim Duncan is 10th. And Kobe is right behind him.
They're right
separated
there.
only by hundredths of a whatever percent, or hundredths of a digit, right? A full digit. 4.278 for Duncan, 4.202 for Kobe. I mean, we're really digging into the minutia, but I love it. And how about our active players? I think Harden's probably done, but Giannis and Jokic are going to add to their tally this year. We know that, right? Because they're second and third, likely second and third if we believe what has been leaked. So I love that. I love checking on cumulative career MVP shares, and that's a fascinating thing to measure and to look at over time. Total rings, 5 and 5, right? So nothing to see here. Keep on moving. We'll keep on trucking. Alpha rings. Do you believe there is such a thing as an alpha ring? Do you believe some rings are weighted more heavily than others? Do you believe that Bill Russell's ring, when there was 10 teams in the league, is less valuable than Dirk Nowitzki beating 29 other teams with no all-stars on his roster? Is there not some argument that not all rings are created the same, and that's why we got to dig a little bit deeper? I like the term alpha rings. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I do agree with that. But I think it has to be taken case by case, because I think there's a very real possibility that even though Bill Russell, just to create a hypothetical example, maybe, he played far fewer teams, but it's also possible that the team that he played in a championship series was a tougher competition on a player-to-player basis than anybody that Dirk might have played, even though we know that Dirk's title run is one of the greatest ever. But I agree. Here, I'll put it differently. In no world is it possible that every ring would be equal. Every path to a championship is always going to be different. It's just a matter of how much and how we investigate it and get into the details of it.
So that begs the question. Duncan, we know, was the alpha on all 5. He wasn't, Kawhi wasn't the best player on that one. Robinson wasn't the best player on his first one. And Duncan was clearly the best player, I think, on all 5. Is there any argument there that he wasn't?
Yes. The argument would be that 2 times the finals MVP went to somebody else, went to Tony Parker, and it went to Kawhi.
And of course, the counter argument would be the Iguodala argument, right? That
Iguodala
won the Finals MVP, and then and Steph was on the team, and so was other really good players.
People are upset about the Jaylen Brown one last year. But Bill Simmons is like, if the Boston Celtics win the finals this year, Bill Simmons has been driving the axe through the media discussion all year that this is Tatum's team. You guys can't give another Finals MVP to Jaylen Brown. So
it was Tatum's team last year until the last 2 series, and then Jaylen took it. Yeah. That's why, again, here's my change. Let me give you one change to the McGill MVP metric. Just double the regular season value and leave the finals the same.
Yeah, I had somebody write into the crossover last week, a friend of mine, Basketball IQ. He was making the other argument. He was saying finals MVP should be worth more. So
it could be 4 games.
I know.
4 games versus 82. Are you kidding?
I mean, it's conceivable that a player could sit out the entire regular season, sit out the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, only play in the finals, and steal finals MVP. Could happen. It's never happened, but it could happen. So that's a huge issue. There's lots of issues with finals MVP.
Yeah. Alpha rings. I have Kobe on here. I think he has 2. He definitely has no less than 2, right?
Yep.
But I have on here, in your wildest dreams as a Kobe fanboy, you could argue that one of the 3 was his. What have you looked closely at that? I didn't look super close because I think I know the answer, but do you think he's got 2 alpha rings or 3 alpha rings, or is it 2.5?
I'm going to stick with 2. He got 2 finals MVPs. Pau Gasol was quite good during those years as well. He wasn't better than Kobe, but the gap, it's not gigantic if you start digging into some of those metrics. But I think he's got 2. He got 2 finals MVPs. I'm going to roll with that.
Okay, I'm with you on that. Comment below. I know Kobe fans. Kobe did have big games and he had big playoffs, but Shaq was otherworldly and he was an anomaly on Earth. Like there was no one else like him during that span, during his prime, his Lakers prime, I should say. Total rings 5-5. All NBA first teams. This is a sort of an easier. It's sort of a little bit bigger net that we're casting than MVP shares, right? So it's a little bit bigger. So it's like you don't have to be in one of the 5 best players in the world. You got to be one of the maybe 5th. This one you do have to be one of the 5 best players, and you got to be the best at your position back then. Of course, that's changed to where it's positionless. But like all NBA first team, all NBA total is a little bit. It's like a 15 player bucket, right? So how many years were you really one of the 15 best players? And you can see Kobe and Duncan didn't really take a backseat to very many people, 15 each. So no blood there, but Kobe does have 1 more NBA first team. So a slight edge to Kobe on that one. Anything about that? Any thoughts?
I just want to highlight. I mean, I know we're only talking about like the 10 greatest players of all time, but to have 11 or 10 All NBA first teams is insane.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, guys. Think about that. That's a decade.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. Clearly, these 2 guys are the face of the 2000s.
That's right. Okay, no defensive player of the years for either, which sort of surprised me that Duncan was almost the John Stockton of defensive players in the NBA. He was one of the best forever. And I don't think it can be argued that he was not the best all-time great power forward. Have there been better defensive power forwards? I guess maybe. I'd have to look at it, but no one was a better defensive power forward for a longer period of time than Duncan. Again, if you consider him a power forward. Shocked that he didn't have a defensive player of the year.
Yeah, but that's a really difficult award to win, and it's a really difficult award to vote on, especially during an era when metrics. There's the saying that the eye test is the best if you can watch all the games, but nobody can watch all the games, and the stats watch all the games. So they didn't have stats really available during the voting periods here. So this was defensive player of the year is already really difficult to assess statistically. So this was really narrative driven. I think this was really like DPOY as an award to like really give to those guys whose entire reputation is carved around being defensive players. So
you just nailed it.
Yeah,
you nailed it right there. That comment you just made. Go back in history, count how many times an elite offensive player or even an alpha on a team has won defensive player of the year. It is a really, really small list of players.
Exactly. So like I think if we went back, there probably could be cases made. I mean, Evan Mobley just won defensive player of the year. Like you could probably make a case that both of these guys could have taken home a DPOY.
No doubt. 15 all defensive teams to Kobe's 12. Kobe's no slouch there. He was an elite defender during his prime. I think he got a little more credit than he deserved later in his career as being an elite defender.
Yeah.
But Duncan, and here's what I don't understand. Duncan wasn't taller than everybody. I mean, he was probably 6'10", 6'11". He wasn't stronger than everybody. He never touched the weights. He couldn't really jump. But I think he was touched by God with a genius IQ, with just impeccable timing and intellect to be a great individual defender and a great team defender. So 15 for Duncan, 12 for Kobe, slight edge to Duncan. 15 is a lot. I think it's the most in NBA history, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think that 15 is the all-time record, or was it Kareem?
I don't know. If it ain't 15, it can't be much more.
Yeah, it's either first or second between him and Kareem. And then here's something I created. It's kind of like your McGill deal. I combined all NBA with all defensive because let's be fair and let's be honest. All NBA teams are based almost exclusively on how good you are at offense that particular season. So let's just throw the other half into the mix and put all defensive on there. There's 15 of them chosen now. Between Kobe and Duncan, it's 27-30. And would you believe that is 1 and 2 in NBA history? These two guys that we're talking about today, when you combine all NBAs and all NBA defensive teams, they are 1-2 in history, 30-27.
Okay, let me push pause for a second here.
Yes.
I just I want to acknowledge I've never seen this as a metric before. I listen and consume a lot of content. I think if I was a Tim Duncan or a Kobe Bryant fan, I think you just gave me ammunition. Like when they say that in the jury box, you know, the job of the litigators is to just equip the jurors with arguments that the jurors can then use to convince other jurors to win the case. So here, I think you've just equipped the jury box and the guys in the jury box who are Kobe and Duncan fans. You just equipped them with an argument that is very strong. The way that you just walk through all NBA, all defensive, and then combine and say that these guys are 1-2. That's a really, I've never seen that argument before. Just wanted to pause, wanted to give a little tip maybe to people who are watching or listening. This is a good argument. This is interesting.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem is that we're comparing them to each other. If it was, if we're going to do this later, if it's a Kobe versus Shaq video, big feather in your cap for Kobe here. My suspicion is Shaq's not going to have anywhere near 27, although he was a great defensive player in his younger years. He ain't going to get to 27. I know that. And the only problem is, we're comparing Kobe to Duncan. And so, it's what. There's not that much disparity between the two, but Duncan did do it in one fewer season now. So Duncan's up 3, but played 1 less season. So there was 2 less on the table there for Duncan. All-star teams, I'll be honest with you. I put this in here only because I wanted to reiterate to the world, just ignore. This needs to start being ignored. I think all-star teams really it's just a bunch of BS. It's a bunch of fluff. It means 1/10 of what an all-NBA team means. And don't even come at me. If you come at me with all-star game MVP as a notch in a belt for a player's career in an argument about top 10, you're probably going to have a very short conversation with me. I'm just going to cut it off and move on, pick up the phone, call somebody else who knows a little bit more about basketball. I don't care about all-star teams. I don't really care about all-star game MVP at all. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, you have first team All-NBA, which is top 5. You have second team top 10. You have third team top 15, and then you get All-Star top 24. It's like if you're a player who's in that All-Star category but didn't make All-NBA, all that's really signifying is that like you played enough games and you were important enough to be voted into an All-Star team, but you were not good enough to make it onto an All-NBA team. So you're kind of living in that no man's land of like somewhere between the 16th and the 25th best player, roughly. That's good. I mean, God, there's 450 players in the league, give or take. So it's but it's not what we're focused on when we're talking about Mount Rushmore top 10 stuff.
Yeah, we got to dig deeper. You got to dig deeper when you're trying to delineate between, player 4 and player 6, or like we're talking about today, Duncan and Kobe with, let's also small, tiny spoiler alert. Duncan and Kobe are in your top 10. True or false?
False. False.
Don't say another word.
Okay.
For the last video.
Yeah.
And I am going to send security to whatever treehouse you're in right now to protect you. Because your life is in danger. I'll just put it that way. You are going to be in danger 45 days from now.
I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to relocate.
Move it again, Christina. We're moving again. All right. 5-year prime. I had 2005 to 2010. Duncan 99 to 2004. We talked about it. Again, super subjective. I had to choose. The reason I chose a prime is because I wanted to see how good they were when they were at their best and then measure them against each other. We're not going to be able to glean very much information out of these next maybe 10 or 12, maybe 15 rows, because we know Kobe's a better scorer. We know Duncan's a better rebounder. We know Kobe passed the ball, had more assists. We know Kobe had more steals, and we know Duncan blocked more shots. And that's exactly what this hard aggregate data conveys, whether it be as a career or in their prime. I don't think we really need to talk too much about it. The only thing I'll say is that Kobe was 4th all time in prime points per game based on the other 10 players where I also chose a prime for them. When you compare Kobe to all the other, I think I have 14 guys that we're considering for the top 10, maybe 15, maybe 12 or 15, something like that. Kobe was 4th behind only Jordan, Wilt, and Kareem. Jordan, Wilt, and Kareem in their prime were out of this world. And you know Kobe was too, but out of this world for the other guys. Highest, here's the trivia for you. Okay, let's take a brief little interlude here. And this is a great trivia question. I'm going to give you a really racist hint.
Let's go.
Highest finals, NBA finals for a career, points per game.
You said a racist hint, so but I think I know the. Isn't it Jerry West?
He's 3rd.
3rd. Okay.
1,
1, 2, and 3. Oh god, I don't know.
West is 3rd.
The era stuff is just, I don't know. I don't know what the hint was. I don't know. MJ's got to be up there.
MJ is 2.
MJ is 2.
Number 1 is a Caucasian.
Okay.
And it's not Jerry West.
And I thought it was Jerry West. Like Bob Pettit or something like that, or like one of these. Havlicek.
This dude did the closest thing to what Dirk Nowitzki did as far as putting a team on his back and just freaking scorched earth.
Bill Walton?
Rick Barry.
Oh, Rick Barry. Okay.
Rick Barry averaged 36.
He wasn't shooting them free throws underhand, was he?
He was.
Okay.
He was obviously scoring a lot of field goals.
He was, man. He was.
Like, it's a big number. It's like 36 something. Jordan like 33 something.
Yeah.
And then Jerry West right after that. So there's your top 3 ever finals points per game.
Yeah, that's impressive.
We're going to skip through all this because honestly, there's really not a lot to look at. And we're going to get to your cup of tea. We're going to get to the part that gets you all moist. Let's start talking about analytics. Let's start talking about some different metrics that are inventions of ultra-modern basketball. Let's start here. Well, first, turnovers per game, 2.4 for Duncan, 3 for Kobe. That's apples and oranges because Kobe had the ball in his hands so much. The smaller the player, usually the higher the turnovers. Some of the greatest players that have ever played in the NBA, including, probably eight or more of these players that are in our top 10 are going to be in the top 20 in the NBA history in turnovers. It's just the way it is. When you have the ball that much, you're going to turn it over that much more. So let's start with effective field goal percentage. Okay. Talk to me about effective field goal percentage. I think that's just factoring in 3-pointers along with 2-pointers, and that the additional value of 3-pointers, merging them together, smushing 2s and 3s together as a percentage and coming out with a number, right?
Bingo. So you have 2 different advanced shooting percentages. One is effective field goal percentage. One is true shooting percentage. The difference is that effective field goal percentage looks at 2s and 3s. True shooting percentage brings in free throw shooting as well. That would be the difference between those two. Effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage, they gain purchase when we're analyzing sports because they acknowledge the fact that, to make it simple, shooting 33% on a 3-point shot is equal to shooting 50% on a 2-point shot. And you might say, why is that? Well, if you shoot 50% on 2s, you get 1 point per shot. If you shoot 33% on 3s, you get 1 point per shot. So the idea here is saying, if effectively, the effective field goal percentage or the true shooting percentage is a guy who shoots 33% on 3s is generating 1 point per shot. That's equal to a guy who's shooting 50% on 2s. So that's what these percentages are trying to capture.
Shockingly, the true shooting percentage is almost identical. And I'm absolutely shocked because Duncan was not a good free throw shooter. I think it was a career 69, 70, something like that, just shy of 70. Not great, right? Really bad for his era. Back then, big men could shoot free throws a little bit better. Now, most of them can't shoot them at all, save for but a few of them. So the fact that they have the same, and look at their prime effective field goal percentage is almost identical to their career effective field goal percentage. The true shooting percentage, it's a very marginal slight edge in favor of Duncan. So really not much to see here. The only reason I made a note on here, and I've done this with you many times where you say, well, this guy's VORP is this. And then I look at the list of the greatest that ever did it.
Yep.
And right now, would you believe that the greatest 1, 2, and 3 in true shooting percentage is Rudy Gobert, DeAndre Jordan, and Jared Allen.
Yeah.
So I am going to go out on a limb and say that this particular measurement is slightly weighted in favor of big people. It is also not truly taking into account free throw percentage as much maybe as we would like.
Or they are skillfully avoiding shooting free throws.
So that's also possible.
Yeah, I mean that's the key. That's going to be the absolute
because
key.
They don't shoot at all.
Exactly.
Or
No, that's going to be the absolute key to all of these metrics.
Yeah.
Is that just defining and understanding what it is they're measuring and what it is they're not measuring. So clearly, the Gobert, DeAndre Jordan, Jared Allen of this is pointing towards several things. Number one, shot diet. That if you're a guy who just the only time you ever shoot is you're standing near the rim and you dunk the ball in, you're going to look great no matter what the shooting metric is. But then that's also telling us that we're not measuring shot creation here. We're not measuring the ability to create a shot necessarily.
Yeah.
Although if you're like 10 feet tall and you just are able to walk over everybody and dunk, then maybe we would be measuring shot creation. So we just don't know. We just aren't measuring something like that. We're also not measuring volume here. So
that's the issue. Yep, the volume. And like the shot location, like every team's going to have a shot diet. There's going to be a handful of opportunities at the rim every game. There's going to be more stuff in the mid-range. There's going to be more stuff at threes. So if you're a guy who's stepping in and taking all your team's difficult shots, and relative to the guy on every other team who takes difficult shots, if you're better at making the difficult shots, and then you can just get paired with an average guy at the rim, your percentage is going to be lower, but your contribution to winning is going to be higher. And this is not measuring that. This is just measuring percentages, applying weights based on whether the shot was worth 3 or 2 or a free throw. And look, you just made another phenomenal argument for Kobe's case in that Tim Duncan didn't have to take as many 3, 2, 1 Kobe. When we're shooting a piece of crumpled up paper into a garbage can, we don't say 3, 2, 1 Tim Duncan bank shot. We say Kobe, right? Or we say Jordan. Yeah. We don't say Tim Duncan, because Kobe was a guy always having to take the hard shots. Some of that was on him because he liked to take hard shots and he often chose himself over teammates. That's fine. He was significantly better than most of his teammates. But to put the Gobert, DeAndre Jordan, Jared Allen in perspective, what if, let's say Kobe took 24 shots a game? What if we said, all right, Rudy, we need 24 FGAs from you over the next 82 games? I suspect his true shooting percentage would come down a little bit.
He'll go from first to last all the time.
From first to literally last. So true shooting percentage, be very, very careful and tiptoe lightly around that. Yeah. The next metric that this is about as far as I go, right, in your advanced analytics. And this is the one I do like it. I personally think there's another one we're going to talk about, win shares per 48 minutes, that I really like, but I think I understand and have cozied up to PER, player efficiency rating, more than any other current metric. Let me read it, and then I'm going to let you go. This was a metric created by John Hollinger, who's still doing stuff for the NBA. He still talks all the time about it. He's a super math nerd. He makes us look like, we're dumb as rocks. Player efficiency rating is John Hollinger's all-in-one basketball rating, which attempts to collect all of a player's contributions into one single number. He's doing the opposite of what we're doing. We're throwing a million numbers at the screen and talking about it. He's trying to reduce it to one. Using a detailed formula, he developed a system that rates every player's statistical performance, and I will say that he equates it and normalizes it with 15.0 being the average NBA player, okay? So going back here, what do you think PER, I mean, this may not be a yes or no question. Do you think it's the best measurement of how good a basketball player is in today's game of analytics?
No, it's not the best, but I like it more than most. I'm higher on it than the average basketball nerd is.
Okay.
Yeah. So PER does a lot of good things, right? Like I love the way that you broke that down, because PER literally was John Hollinger saying, let me take every possible stat I have from a player within a season and a team and the league, and then let me do several things. First of all, let me make adjustments. Let me make sure everything is relative to league average, which allows us to do year versus year comparisons. So like it's about measuring the players in a season to the other players in a season. So the league average is important. He adjusts it for pace as well. So pace is just how many possessions per game are played. So in the 80s, they were playing a ton of possessions per game. In the 90s and the 2000s, they weren't playing very many possessions per game. In the 2010s, they started going back up, and now we're playing a ton of possessions again. So the speed of the game changes. He adjusts it to be per possession, which is important too. So adjustment to league average, adjustment to per possession is very helpful. And then he did exactly what you said. He took all the metrics that he has in front of him that a box score generates, which at the time when he was inventing this was like the late 2000s. All the metrics that were in front of him that he had available at that time, he took them all. He said, I'm going to give players positive credits when they do stuff good. If they successfully make shots and they grab rebounds and they dish out assists, all the good things, we're going to give positive scores for that. All the bad things that they do, which is turnovers, which is fouls, we're going to take away from them doing that. And then we're going to spit out a number. And so if you don't like player efficiency rating, there's a lot of reasons to not like it. It's not an impact metric. It's a production metric. It's just John Hollinger is applying his wisdom and his knowledge to sum up all these different contributions to the box score that the player has made and then spitting out a number. And what's nice about it is that it's applying the exact same criteria to every player. Now, that's also a place of criticism too, because people play different positions. The positional adjustments aren't being made in player efficiency rating. It's just Hollinger saying here, this is going to be as egalitarian as possible. We're going to take all the stats from all the players, their points, everything that shows up in box score. I'm going to apply weights to it. I'm going to adjust it to league average. I'm going to adjust it to pace, and I'm going to spit out a number. So when you understand what it's doing, it's a production metric. It's not an impact metric. It's not correlated in any way to a player winning or losing their minutes. It's just, hey, here's all the stuff that happened in the box score. I adjusted it for league average and for pace, and then here's the number that comes out. So when you understand what it is, it can be a good number, and you can also understand when it's helpful and when it's not.
I love it because unlike the effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentage and those other things, because of the adjustments that Hollinger made, you can measure it amongst in between players spanning many decades apart.
Yes.
Because you're measuring it against their peers in that time, right? And
yes.
So with their pace and with their number of possessions, the one place where PER sort of does get loose, true or false, it is definitely skewed in favor of big men.
Yep.
And it is definitely skewed, in my opinion, in favor of offensive players. So usually offensive players are going to have a better PER, all things being equal, than equally as talented, productive defensive players. And I think the reason for that, correct me if I'm wrong, or at least one of the reasons for that is it doesn't measure charges taken. It doesn't measure team defense. It doesn't measure deflections. It doesn't measure altered shots. It measures steals and blocks. That's great, but it doesn't measure altered shots and your effect that you can have on a defensive game. And so that's why it's even more shocking that Tim Duncan's got such a significantly better PER than Kobe Bryant. Like, it is a lot better. People are looking at the screen and like, Cajun, you're an idiot. It's only 1.3. 1.3 is a huge difference over a span of 20 years for a PER, especially when, the last few years, Tim Duncan was a freaking fossil. He was a mummy wandering around who couldn't bend his knees and certainly wasn't playing any offense. Yeah. And I'm shocked that he's got that much better of a PER than the great Kobe Bryant. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, but you're spot on. Like, defenses, it just has less things that measure it, and Hollinger dings you for committing fouls, and sometimes a foul is committed for a positive reason, not a negative one. So like, but then you also might think that over the long haul, that sort of all comes out in a wash anyway. Each player is going to eventually commit a similar number of. There's no reason to think one player would be committing more positive fouls than another. They just end the game situations. You take the intentional foul. So, that's just the beauty and the downside of PER is that things like field goal percentage, things like grabbing rebounds, things like dishing assists, things like just raw scoring points. I mean, it's just, these are things that are going to increase as you're doing stuff, as you're producing things, as you're producing numbers that show up in the box score, it's going to accumulate into PER. And if you do it efficiently, and that's right there in the title, player efficiency rating, you're going to be rewarded. So there's not the positional adjustments being made here. There's not the adjustment being made for the fact that a guy at Kobe's position having a true shooting percentage of 55% is way more impressive than a guy at Tim Duncan's position also having a true shooting percentage of 55%. That adjustment is not made in PER.
Yeah. So yes or no, big deal. 24.2 to 22.9.
I say no. I say not a big deal because
Not
there's
enough.
so much play in the joints here. There's so much room for this. I mean, you're right that it is a significant gap in the sense that one gets you 15th and one gets you 31st.
Yeah.
But it's also like a rounding error. If one guy has a PR of 23, one guy has a PR of 24, those guys are in the same tier.
Yeah. It's also, 15th out of whatever 4,000 people and 31st right. out of 4,000 people. So you're still talking about one of ones, right? To use a card term. Yeah. Offensive rating and defensive rating. I am very worried about this offensive rating metric. And I used to kind of pay attention to it after I did a little more research. I think I'm out, man. Number 1, 2, and 3 in history are Allen, Gobert, and Capella. And by Allen, I don't mean Ray. I mean Jared Allen.
Yeah.
Gobert and the great Clint Capella. So basically the triplets are 1, 2, and 3 in history for offensive rating. That blew my mind. I can't explain it. Can you explain that?
Yes.
That anomaly? And
yes, I can.
That's a fallacy. Something's going on there.
Something is definitely going on here. And here's what it is. So Basketball Reference does not use NBA's most current definition of offensive and defensive rating. So like really quick, offensive rating and defensive rating were invented by Dean Oliver in the early 2000s. And he also invented 4 factors. He has a great book called Basketball on Paper. He has another great book called Basketball Beyond Paper. He's a godfather of analytics. He invented offensive and defensive rating. And they're really simple concepts now, but they weren't at the time when he was inventing these things. The offensive rating is simply how many points per possession did your team score times 100. That's all that means. That is the definition of offensive rating. However, the play-by-play era didn't start until 1996-97, meaning the NBA was not tracking play-by-play data until 1996-97. So you have this big multi-decade period of time where we don't have play-by-play data, which means we can't actually calculate per possession ratings. We can't calculate offensive rating and defensive rating without that stuff. So we have this earlier era of time where we needed to estimate it. We just needed to come up with an estimate for what offensive and defensive rating were. Now these are team stats, but you notice that these are framed as individual stats. So what it technically means today, let's take SGA for example. SGA had an amazing offensive rating this year. I think he had an offensive rating of like 124. That's his true offensive rating. That's how many points per possession times 100, or that's how many points per 100 possessions the Oklahoma City Thunder scored when he was on the floor. 124. That's just the number. It's a team statistic, but it's phrased from a player's point of view because it's only when he is on the floor. When he's off the floor, the Thunder had a much worse offensive rating, first of all, and that offensive rating does not impact his at all. So let's say the Thunder were like 112 offensive rating or something when he was off the floor, 124 when he's on. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's offensive rating is 124. That's just his offensive rating. Now, Basketball Reference is not using that number. Basketball Reference is using a formula that I believe Dean Oliver had invented. And what that formula is doing, the formula is trying to estimate that. And what's nice about it is that it gets to let us look all the way back to before we had tracking data so that we could calculate offensive and defensive ratings. But then, you get these results where it's like, if you dig into the formula, it's relying on this metric called points produced. Points produced is really closely tied to like efficiency on shooting. So, and it's just trying to estimate a lot of different things. It's an interesting number. And when you look under the hood, you see how it's calculated, but it's not even the true offensive rating.
On a scale of 1 to 100, how much do you care about offensive rating?
When I'm looking at metrics every season and every playoffs, I never look at Basketball Reference's offensive and defensive rating. I think
I'm in your camp now. As I look at it a little bit more, I always like to look at the anomalies, like the people that don't fit, and say to you, look, if it's a measurement that's got John Collins as the 13th greatest offensive player ever, then it's not a rating that I want to use.
That's completely fair. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing that's like confusing about it too, is like this isn't even what we mean when we say offensive rating today.
Yeah,
right.
It's really interesting. So we're gonna ditch that one. It's even anyway, so there's really not much to talk about. Defensive rating. Tim Duncan, this is how many points are given up per 100 possessions by this player's team while he's on the floor. Fair? So,
that's what it's supposed to be. But the Basketball Reference number is an estimate of that. It's not the actual measurement. It's an estimate of it.
But I thought 96 they started to get accurate. No,
they did, but Basketball Reference for the sake of continuity, so that we can compare somebody from 1962 to today, they continue to use the estimate system.
Okay. Well, on the estimate system, Duncan is pretty freaking good on defense. He's third all time. It's a pretty strong list. The one thing I forgot this trivia question, and this is just a softball for you. You're going to love this one. This one you're going to get 1, 2, 3 in order, probably, because I know how much you pay attention to it. Okay. For personal selfish reasons. Yeah. Highest career PER as of right now.
I believe that goes Jokic, Jordan, Wilt.
Jokic, Jordan, LeBron. Jokic, Jordan, LeBron. So my question to you is back up here. Just relax with your insane Nikola Jokic card collection. Can he hold off Jordan over the course of his career? I guess it depends on how long he goes and how many twilight years he plays. Do you think he's going to finish with the highest PER ever, Jokic?
No, I think it's going to be really tough to top Jordan because of the way that Jordan sort of timed his retirement and because of how good Jordan was the moment he came into the league. And that's partially because he had a few college years. So, that's the career number is going to skew in favor of a guy who, first of all, has multiple of the greatest PER seasons of all time, which is Jordan. And then second of all, who didn't have twilight years and early developmental years as some of the other guys have. And Jokic, I do think it's going to break my heart, but he's going to keep playing through mediocrity. I think
you think he will? Yeah. I don't want to make this a when is Jokic going to retire video.
But I know.
Hey, look, man, if there's anybody in the NBA that might say, you know what?
Yeah.
Basketball is fun, but it's just a job. I like to drink beer and raise cattle. He would be the guy, or I like to do harness racing. You don't see something weird out of nowhere coming from him like that?
No. First of all, he's already one of the wealthiest people in Serbia. He's going to get a 5-year contract coming up soon. That's going to be worth $500 million, maybe a little bit less, but it's going to be on the order of $500 million. And then there's probably going to be a chance for him to sign another one that's worth that much too. He's going to sign that contract. He's going to honor it. He's going to fulfill it. And the guy also never gets injured. So he doesn't jump. He doesn't do anything athletic on the floor. He's just, he's built to just be the slow moving tank that's going to continue pushing through.
Who are we talking about today that's almost built the exact same way? Tim Duncan.
Yeah.
That dude is not muscular. He wasn't overwhelming. He slithered around. He didn't jump 40 inches. Everything that you just said about Jokic, and again, he's on a little bit more extreme. I mean, he's probably Jokic's probably 290 pounds and bigger than Duncan. But Duncan's the same way, man. He plays an injury-free style of basketball. He's like the anti-John Morant, anti-Zion Williamson.
Exactly. And you know what? It doesn't make for the most spectacular highlight reel, but it keeps him on the floor.
But you can add up some aggregate stats. I can tell you that much.
You make up for it in stat padding.
Defensive rating, the big difference. We looked at all NBA defensive teams. We looked at steals, blocks, all that stuff. The defensive rating would lead one to believe, despite how flawed it might be, that Duncan has a noticeable advantage in that area. What about win shares? Let's do it this way. There's win shares. There's offensive win shares. There's defensive win shares, and then there's win shares per 48 minutes. So some of these there's overlap. There's duplication here, of course. What matters more to you? I say win shares and win shares per 48 minutes matter the most to me in that order. Win shares per 48 is a great measurement of just how damn great a player was while they were on the floor. Win shares overall in the aggregate is going to reward players who just continue to accumulate win shares over time, even if they're not doing it at the same clip that they were in their prime. Which one matters more to you, win shares or win shares per 48? Or is it
by far the rate version, the per 48 version?
Okay.
I'm just not interested in longevity stats for the most part. I think that they're cool. I when a guy is good for a long time or great for a long time, but I'm most fascinated by, and it's not even close, by who was the best even for a short amount of time. So to make the example really extreme, let's say you have one guy who averages 20 points per game for 25 years. And it's just, oh my God, this guy played for a quarter of a century. This is amazing. And then you got a different guy who averaged 50 points a game, but he only played 5 years. I'm interested in the 50 points per game guy, even though he only did it for 5 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The win shares per 48 and the overall win shares are heavily skewed in favor of Duncan over Kobe. Where do win shares and win shares per 48, where does that fall in your, for lack of a better word, hierarchy of advanced analytics and advanced metrics? More important than PER, less important than PER?
It's on about the same footing for me, and there's a lot of people who like win shares, and win shares is very helpful because it's able to be retroactively calculated.
Yes.
But here's the thing: if you look under the hood of win shares are derived from offensive rating and defensive rating, and not the ones that we officially use today. They are derived from those formulas that Basketball Reference uses. Now, that it's also a relative stat. So it's for each season, it's relative to league average. So even though you have somebody like Jared Allen, who has the highest offensive rating of all time, but his offensive rating is going to be adjusted in season when it's used to calculate his win shares, and his win shares per 48. But that's an important thing to think about, is that offensive rating and defensive rating, those are the two components that form the foundation for what win shares are. And then offensive rating is adjusted to league average, defensive rating is adjusted to league average. Those are the two main inputs that produce the win shares per 48 and then the win shares metric. It's not as skewed, it's not as scary or as skewed when we look at the all-time list, because part of the problem with the all-time list is that we're looking at guys from a very efficient era, and we're comparing them to guys from inefficient eras.
Yes.
So it doesn't suffer from those same problems. It's intra-season comparisons, but that's the thing to note, is that this is all being derived from these offensive rating and defensive rating calculations. Those feed into the calculation of win shares. I do like win shares. I like the fact that you can look back in time using them. I like the fact that it gives us these apples to apples comparisons. I do like the offensive and defensive rating calculations. I find them interesting. I think that they do say something that is observably true when we look within a season and we compare things. But that's why I don't have PER, or I look at both and I enjoy both, but I don't have either of them over the third one, the final one that's coming up.
Okay. Just a side note, win shares per 48 minutes. Duncan is 17th all time. Kobe is 66th. He is ranked one behind Larry Nance Sr. and one ahead of DeAndre Jordan on win shares per 48.
Yeah, he's getting killed because those offensive and defensive rating don't really like him.
Yeah, that's where I get frightened of analytics. We've got 3 coming up: box plus minus, VORP, and usage. Let me go backwards here. Let me start with usage.
Okay.
Do you care at all? Tell me why we should care about usage. First of all, explain what usage is, usage percentage, and then it's a percentage, right? And then tell me why we should care about it.
So usage is when possession terminates with an action taken by that player, whether it's a shot, a turnover, or a free throw, I think, or I don't assists don't factor into usage
rate. It's a shot, turnover, free throw.
Yeah, it's just when those things. So already, like, usage is excluding things that we care about. Like, people have come up with like more recent versions of usage, like I think the Dunk Don podcast guys have something called total usage, or maybe one of the guys they work with have it. And then like the Thinking Basketball guy, Ben, he has something called like total box creation, which tries to capture things the usage rate doesn't, like assisting or creating shots for teammates or hockey assists and stuff like that. Like, usage is telling us something. Like, the reason why I think usage continues to have purchase is, number one, it's a good name. Like, people just hear the word usage, they say this is a player who's using a lot of possessions, and then, hey, look, the guys who are really high on it, Giannis, Luka, these type of players who have high usage rate, like, they're guys who use a ton of possessions. Like, when I watch the game, the ball is always in their hands.
Yeah, so, in a nutshell, here's your top 10. You ready? Career: Doncic, Jordan, Trae Young, Kobe Bryant, Iverson, LeBron, Donovan Mitchell, Dwayne Wade, DeMarcus Cousins, Russell Westbrook, George Gervin, Wilkins, Dominique Wilkins. How about this? Usage is dudes who shoot a lot. A lot.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, 100%. That's what it is.
Okay. So does it matter? Is that something we should look at? And should we be surprised that Kobe is 4th all time and Tim Duncan is 27th all time?
I think it means a little something. It's a stat that I never look at, but I think it means a little something. I think it means, like you said, this is a guy who shoots a lot, or who gets to the foul line a lot, or both. And, basically this is a guy who has the ball a lot. And, if a guy has a really high usage rate on a team that wins a championship, at the bare minimum, that means that was a really important player to that team.
Really important player. Box plus minus and VORP.
These are my favorite. These are the ones that
I would not have guessed. I would have said win shares per 48 and PER. Maybe I don't understand them as well as you do. Both of these are heavily favored in Tim Duncan's favor. So let's talk through them and why that might be the case. Talk to me about, let's go box plus minus first.
Yeah. Well, okay. So VORP is just the cumulative version of box plus minus. So they are the same thing. It's just VORP is, adding up. VORP is rewarding a guy who had a high box plus minus for a long period of time.
Okay.
Box plus minus is the most methodologically rigorous. And I'm going to just try to keep this really as short as I possibly can. So in the 2000s, Dan Rosenbaum started inventing a concept called adjusted plus minus, which the idea is that the thing that matters in basketball is not the box score. It doesn't matter how many points or assists or rebounds anybody gets. The thing that matters in basketball is who is winning their minutes. That is the efficient number. That is the number that matters. So if I have a player who just, like Draymond Green is an example. This is a guy who has led the league in raw plus minus before. He does very little statistically. He'll have triple singles all the time, but he's a guy who has a good raw plus minus. So they're starting from the premise that if a guy scores 50 points, but his team loses by 20 every time he goes on the floor, we're not interested in calling that a good player. What we're interested in is finding out who those players are who win their minutes, especially when you rotate out teammates. So if Draymond, he's not really a good example because he doesn't score high in these. Giannis is a guy who has the highest box plus minus in the playoffs right now. If in the adjusted plus minus modeling, which is the precursor to box plus minus, if a guy like Giannis, if the Bucks are winning, no matter if you have Taurean Prince on the floor with him, or you swap him out for Kevin Porter Jr., or you swap him out for Bobby Portis, no matter who you recycle around Giannis, the Bucks continue to win the minutes, and the constant is Giannis. That's what adjusted plus minus was designed to bring out. However, it was a very noisy data set for infinite reasons. We don't need to go into why it was noisy. So there was an addition made to this methodology that in addition to controlling for teammates and who wins their minutes, no matter who's on the floor, they also brought in a regression technique called regularization. So adjusted plus minus evolved to become regularized adjusted plus minus. This happened in the early 2010s. This regression technique introduces a penalty that penalizes really large adjusted plus minus scores. So it just kind of tends to shrink everything back to zero unless we have really strong evidence not to do that. So basically, this ended up really stabilizing the data set. So we can calculate the regularized adjusted plus minus for everything going back to 1996, 97. Once we got the play-by-play tracking data, we can now, all we need is the plus minus. When guys are on the floor, when guys come in and guys come off, we have all that data. So we have these huge regularized adjusted plus minus data sets that are 10, 15, 20 years in size if we want to. At that point, you've got a really, really robust data set. So the problem, though, is that year to year, this can, even with regularization, it can be a really noisy data set because you have the problem of multi-collinarity. You have the problem of guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams always playing together. And so if they only play like 2 minutes without each other, and like during one of those minutes, a heave goes in and all of a sudden it looks like, this one guy's awful and the other guy's good because we only have 2 minutes without each other, that's a big problem. That's the problem of multi-collinarity. Regularized adjusted plus minus can't solve that. So, but there is, so this is the genius of box plus minus, which was invented by Daniel Myers in the early 2010s, and he's been revising it ever since. Box plus minus says, we're going to go back now. We said that box score doesn't matter. We just want to look at plus minus. We're going to go back. We're going to take the box score stats. We're going to take points, rebounds, and assists. We're going to identify what position you play based on a historical correlation of players who generate your particular statistical profile. What is their average position when we look at a big sample? So we're going to take position and we're going to take box score. And then we're going to see how this particular production correlates to players in a regularized adjusted plus minus sample of 10 or 15 years. And Daniel Myers' first sample was 14 years. So he said, for example, a player who is a point guard who scores efficiently and gives out a lot of assists and gets a lot of steals. This is a guy who has who consistently has a high regularized adjusted plus minus. So BPM brings in the stability of box score metrics that control for the problem of multicollinarity. So it's saying players who have this particular statistical profile have won their minutes over large samples. So box plus minus is approximating who wins their minutes the most based on the statistical profile of players who historically have won their minutes the most. And each year we get new data coming in, new regularized adjusted plus minus data. And so in the gold standard of this, like, how do we know it's working? And this is what really like puts the cherry on top here for box plus minus. There was a study done by Simon Zhao about 5 or 6 years ago, where he took all the advanced metrics. He took PER, he took win shares per 48, he took regularized adjusted plus minus, he took true shooting percentage even, and he took box plus minus. And he looked over a 4-year period. If you apply the score of each player and weight it by how many minutes they played, which one predicts team wins the best in year 0, in year 1, year 2, and year 3. Box plus minus won that comparison. It was the most predictive statistic for predicting team success. So that's box plus minus. It's good descriptively. I think it's really helpful in that it describes the player's impact, and it's also good predictively. It's been shown to be the most predictive of all of these all-in-one metrics in predicting team success. So box plus minus is the gold standard.
All that being said, this is what we were discussing over text not too long ago, and you at some point lost me. How can we use this metric to compare, let's say, for example, a player like a coattail rider, like a Draymond Green, who spent his entire career playing on a team with 2 of the 5 greatest shooters that ever lived, and by the way, Kevin Durant as well, versus Lauri Markkanen, who's played for trash. How can we compare Lauri Markkanen's box plus minus to Draymond Green? What normalizes your shittiest roster of all time on a team that's trying to tank and lose games by as many points as possible versus a team that's usually winning 60 to 70 games a year?
Well, if you're on a tanking team, you are not playing winning basketball. And if you're not playing winning basketball, you're probably not going to be rewarded by any metric. So I don't know if there is a way to control for like a tanking example. And I don't know if we want there to be. I mean, is there a way to say, like, even though Lauri Markkanen's trying to lose, he's still this good?
I'm not saying he's trying to lose, but he's on a roster that's built to lose.
Okay. So
and a coach who's trying to lose, and a GM who's trying to lose. My question to you is this: when this was, I think this might have been the example you used, or maybe I used Jordan Poole as an example. Those guys are much better basketball players than Draymond Green.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So like if Markkanen is trying to win, then what should emerge is that no matter which player you rotate out, so like let's say the Utah Jazz are losing their minutes by 10 on average over the course of a season. But when Markkanen is on the floor, they only lose by 5. When Markkanen is off the floor, they lose by 15. And no matter which players you rotate in and out alongside Markkanen, whether John Collins is in or whether John Collins is out, or whether Jordan Clarkson is in or whether Jordan Clarkson is out, no matter who you rotate in or out, Markkanen consistently gets the team up to a -5 per 100 for -5 points per 100 possessions discrepancy. And when he's off, the team is consistently -15. So when you control for teammates, that what the adjusted plus minus stuff is going to suss out is the gap. So, whether you have a guy like
the delta, you're measuring the
delta. Boom.
Okay. So it's your effect on your shitty roster versus his effect on his fantastic roster. If Draymond Green's team is 10 points better when he's off the floor,
yes,
and they win 65 games, but Lauri Markkanen's team is 2 points, better when he's off the floor, Lauri Markkanen's going to have a much better plus minus.
Yeah. And so like, here's the really interesting thing. It's very rare that you get a situation where you can have a natural study of this number. And if this number is doing its job, then if you have a player who changes teams mid-season, this number should stay the same because the player isn't getting better or worse.
The player's value is the player's value.
But the pieces around the player are changing. But if this is truly measuring a player's impact, and we're assuming that the player is stepping into the same role.
Assuming his role doesn't change and the impact he's allowed to have on the game doesn't change. That's
exactly.
Constant.
So we had this happen this year. We had Luka Doncic happen this year, and his box plus minus, I think, was like roughly 6.5 with the Lakers and roughly 6.5 with the Mavericks. That's a sign of a good metric.
Yeah. So box plus minus heavily weighted to Duncan. VORP heavily weighted to Duncan, one of the greatest of all time. You need to talk about VORP?
VORP is just box plus minus times minutes played.
Times what?
Minutes played.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And both of those guys played tons of minutes.
Yep.
What do you think? Well, here we are. We're 1 minute and 8 seconds into this. This video will be probably a little bit longer than the future ones where we do these one-on-one matchups. Right. We're trying to come to some kind of conclusion. There's a lot of yellow on Duncan's side, not as much on Kobe's side. Some of it we've kind of tried to explain away. All said and done, who's your guy? Who's your guy? Duncan, the other thing we didn't mention is teams. They both played with amazing teammates. I don't want to hear anything about Duncan and continuity and chemistry. Ginobili, Parker, Kawhi, and David Robinson, right? And the great Bruce Bowen, your favorite player. And then, Kobe Bryant, we got Dwight Howard, we got, we got Pau Gasol, we got Fisher, Ori, Shaq, all those guys. And of course, he played with, his version, Smush Parker, his version of terrible teammates as well. So Kobe's been through it all. Duncan was a little bit more steady. Duncan had 19 straight 50-win seasons. That's crazy. Yeah. 19 straight seasons. Every season of his career, he made the playoffs. The one thing you can say about Duncan that you can't say about Kobe is he's the greatest at his position that ever played, assuming he's a power forward. Go back to the first thing we talked about. Kobe, unfortunately, just drew the short stick. He plays shooting guard. So the odds of him being the greatest shooting guard of all time were very slim. Duncan is, I think, unequivocally the greatest power forward of all time. I think he's unequivocally the greatest defensive power forward of all time. That's an easier argument. And his playoff PER is 10th all time. He raised his level in the playoffs. And Kobe had a very good playoff PER as well of 25th all time. Tim Duncan has more top 5 NBA defensive ratings than Gobert and Ben Wallace combined. That's disturbing because all those guys did was play defense. All they were required to do was play defense. And Tim Duncan was the alpha, the fulcrum, and the best offensive player on his team. And he had the same number of top 5 NBA defensive ratings. And again, we've talked about how that might be a little bit flawed as well. So Kobe or Duncan, in order, give me 2 sentences, your summary and who you choose. After all this data and after all these words that you and I have exchanged, we gotta make a decision here.
Can I amend this to 1 to 2 paragraphs?
Rather than yes, okay. I know this is hard for you. You're a wordsmith.
This is hard.
Wizard.
This is extremely hard. Okay, so I was a bit moved by what we went through. I was particularly moved by the all NBA plus all defensive and Kobe having 30 and having the most of any player ever. That was moving. And I think that when guys sit down and take an hour or two and actually start going through numbers, it's remarkable how negligible the difference truly is between these two players.
I know.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the case a lot. I think what we're going to find out, the deeper we dive into each of these players, that these guys all just were really good. And we're almost, we're splitting hairs. I mean, even like I started looking at like just their title windows. So like Duncan won titles between 1998-99 and 2013-14, and Kobe won titles in between 1999, 2000, 2009, 2010. And when I looked into that, like their box plus minus, whether regular season or playoffs, was basically the same. Yeah. So these guys are really close. But I'm not moved off of the McGill metric. So I'm just sticking with total MVPs for this one. I'm going to give the edge to Duncan. He got 5. Kobe got 3.
Okay. I also have Duncan, a much less sexy way of doing what he did. And that's kind of reflected, to tie it all back into their cards, that kind of reflects why his card prices are so suppressed in comparison to Kobe Bryant. I'm not sharing anything we didn't already know and the whole hobby doesn't understand. Is that, excitement sells, and Duncan wasn't exciting. Duncan off the court wasn't exciting. Duncan on the court wasn't exciting. Duncan wasn't volatile personality. He wasn't volatile in his game. He wasn't going to, I don't know if he ever scored 50 in a game. In fact, I don't know. That's a good question. I bet he never scored 50 in a single game. Yeah. Kobe, we know, scored 81. Kobe, we know, scored 50 many times. We scored 40 a bazillion times, right? And the way he did it, I think there's also a tendency for human beings to relate to and romanticize players who look, and I'm not saying we look like Kobe Bryant, right? But who look more like them. Right. Like Steph Curry relates to a lot of people. Why? Because he looks like a human being. Right. Shaquille O'Neal doesn't. I don't relate to him. Why? Because he doesn't look like a human being. He's different, right? I don't romanticize. I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be like Shaq. I knew I wasn't going to be like Shaq for lots of reasons. Kobe Bryant, despite being touched by God and obviously a blessed basketball player, at least he looks like a dude walking down the street and you're like, oh, you must have played basketball somewhere. If you see Shaq, you're literally getting your camera and saying, look at this creature I just saw. So I think there's something about Kobe Bryant that has sort of led everybody down that path. And also, not to mention, where'd they play? That matters. That matters. That affects public perception to a massive extent. It's funny that the top 3 finishers in MVP voting are going to be Denver, OKC, and Milwaukee this year.
Yeah.
That's probably not, high on the list of the NBA's wants, for viewing and stuff like that. So I'm also with you, Chris, and I know we're going to get a lot of heat from that. I have both these guys easily in my top 10. These guys are both easily in my top 10. And I do believe we're splitting hairs. And that's sort of the reason I wanted to do this one first, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. I do have Duncan slightly better. And again, people are going to come at us with a lot of vitriol, a lot of hatred, but like, we're talking about Kobe Bryant as one of the, 1% of 1% of 1% that have ever, done their craft in the NBA. And so it is what it is. We got to pick and choose. And our goal here and our quest, like Chevy Chase and freaking vacation, was we're going to give you our top 10 and we're going to do it in order, and we're going to substantiate it and buffer it with facts and statistics. And so, you brought it all back home with the McGill MVP metric. I kind of like throwing it all on the wall and then just kind of counting it up and then putting it all back together and seeing who won. And I think Duncan has a slight edge, man.
Yeah, I thought that was really well said. Let me end with this. If somebody told me that their analytic or their metric for determining who the GOAT is just combining all NBA and all defensive appearances, and that's their metric, I have no criticism of that. The only thing that I ask is consistency. So if we are going to do that, then that's the criteria that we use to rank every player, even if it produces a guy in 4th place that we don't like. That's what I ask, is just for consistency. If somebody's metric is who was the flashiest in-game dunker, and they have Vince Carter as the guy who's in 1st place in that metric, everybody, it's subjective. Deciding what you think means best is a completely subjective thing. And then the final thing I'll say is that, but all I ask is consistency. So if you tell me that in-game dunking is how you determine who the GOAT is, and then you have Nikola Jokic in 2nd place, I'm going to say you are not consistently applying your criteria. Right. But okay, so then the last thing I want to throw in is that I was really impressed. I'm very impressed with Kobe. I'm very impressed with Kobe the player. I'm very impressed with Kobe the icon, for all the reasons you said. And just because of the Mamba mentality and because of how inspirational he was and what he meant to so many people and what he meant to the sport of basketball. But I also came away from this being really impressed. I will definitely remember that all NBA plus all defensive metric that you created. And then I might even throw that at somebody sometime.
They're 1-2. If we go by that metric, these are the 2 greatest players that ever lived. They're 1 and 2.
It's a really cool metric.
Obviously, very much rewarding, the duration of your career and longevity, which, you like to sometimes set to the side because, I agree with you, prime really does matter. And I don't mean prime like best 3 years. I mean prime like best 10 years. Yeah. But shit, man, you look at LeBron James, he's got 2 primes. He's got 2 decades worth of prime. Yep. Let's end it on a trivia question. You ready for another one?
Let's go.
All right, and I'm going to give you an insane stat, and this is a great teaser.
I love this. The trivia stuff's awesome.
This is going to be a great teaser for the final, and I'm grilling you on your analytics. Okay. Highest career VORP, highest career value over replacement player. You talked about it. You talked about how much you like it and how it's sort of an amalgamation of all of the box plus minus, right, over career. Highest VORP. This, you're probably going to get this.
Yep, this is an easy one. This guy puts up very high box plus minuses even to this day, and it's LeBron. I mean, it's LeBron in a runaway.
It's not just LeBron. It's LeBron by 40 in that category over Michael Jordan, okay? Yep. Who knows what Jordan's VORP would be if he played 20 years or if he could even play 20 years. But it's by 40 over LeBron over Jordan.
Let me tell you something else. Oh, sorry.
The difference between LeBron and Jordan, 40, is the same as the difference between Shaquille O'Neal and Jason Terry. That's the disparity between LeBron and Jordan. So all you folks who are out there and you've set your calendars and you're waiting for the LeBron versus Jordan video that we're going to get to, I promise you, we're going to get to that video. That's a huge feather in your cap where you better hang your hat on that longevity thing, because that's going to be LeBron's best bet.
Dude, it's amazing. And a lot of the attention gets put on regular season box plus minus because that's the fair sample. Everybody plays 82 games. You play roughly the same team the same amount of times. Obviously, conference it's different based on conference, but it's close enough. And playoffs is really different because in the playoffs, one guy might just play one team 4 times, then they're out. The other guy's playing 4 much better teams 7 times a piece or whatever. But the greatest single season playoff BPM at a staggering plus 17.1, which is the highest single season BPM for a playoff or a regular season, belongs to LeBron. I think it was his 2009 playoff run, plus 17.1. It's the best we've ever seen. I don't know how anybody's going to top it. It didn't win a championship.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like when I filter out playoff stuff, I really only like to compare championship seasons, because at least then I know that these are people who went all the way to the mountaintop. So like there's something sort of apples to apples about that. But LeBron, best single season playoff BPM. I noticed that when I was looking into some BPM stuff like last week, and plus 17.1 is just, I mean, what that's saying is that the impact of LeBron James per 100 possessions on a game, as estimated by
almost.
BPM, 17.1 points in the playoffs. No less.
It makes me say, Eric Spoelstra, why didn't you just play him 48? I mean, he was in his prime. Why didn't you just play 48 times 7 or whatever you needed to do, right?
Maybe you should have.
Who knows, right? Who knows? That's it. That's episode 1. It was Kobe versus Duncan. We both had Duncan by a hair. We happened to agree on this one. We didn't really discuss, well, in fact, we didn't discuss any of this beforehand. So this was as organic as it gets. We should say this, because there are a lot of card collectors that are going to be watching, basketball card collectors. I own, I think, 1 Tim Duncan card and 3 Kobe Bryant cards, but 2 of the Kobe Bryant cards have Michael Jordan on the front of it. So
that would be the East-West refractor.
Mystery finest. Yeah.
Mystery finest.
That's it. So you guys know I have no dog in this hunt, and no, I am not threatened as a Michael Jordan collector and fan by Kobe Bryant. But I may be threatened by the LeBron arguments, but I'm not threatened by the Kobe Bryant arguments. So I really don't have any dog in this hunt, and I sure as hell don't give a damn about the San Antonio Spurs or Tim Duncan. So I try to be as objective as possible. Who would I rather watch play basketball? Kobe Bryant. Same thing. But who is better? Who had a better career? I think we both lean Duncan, just in a very slight way. So that's it. That's episode number 1. Let us know in the comments, who else we need to do as far as matchups, and do one of these analytical deep dives, and let Chris run with his perspective and let me run with my perspective. I can tell you right now, the very next one we're doing, we'll try to calendar this for maybe a week from today or 7 to 10 days. We are definitely doing Bird and Magic next, because I think throughout history, these two have been inextricably linked, and I don't see that ever changing, and they're damn close, man. There's definitely pros and cons, especially if you look at Larry Legend's prime years, which, Chris, you and I have discussed in the past. They are up there with anybody's prime years, including Mr. Michael Jeffrey Jordan and Wilt Chamberlain. Bird's prime, that 3 MVP run was preposterous. So Bird versus Magic is next. All you old folks can come back and check that one out. That'll be about a week from today, and we'll try to keep you all apprised on Instagram. Chris, anything else from your treehouse? By the way, what city are you in? You did y'all move from Dallas?
We moved from Dallas. Yep. This is they don't got tree houses like this in Dallas.
No way. No.
Yeah. No, we're in Wisconsin now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, next week we're on. Thank you guys for watching. Chris, thanks for joining. Thanks for jumping along for this journey. I think it's going to be fun. This is going to be some good evergreen content people can look at for a long time, whether they collect cards or just want to talk about basketball. I think it's going to be fun, man.
I agree. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. As always, hit the like button if you liked the video. Hit the subscribe button if you want to keep watching content on the Cajun Cardboard YouTube channel. I'd be remiss if I did not mention that, again, the guy that is to my right or left, I can't figure out how cameras work, is one of the founders of Card Ladder. And Card Ladder is an affiliate partner of mine and my exclusive data, pricing, and basketball card information source. My exclusive source. It is integral, and it is indispensable in the way that I collect and invest in sports cards. It's worth you guys checking out. Use the affiliate link that's in the YouTube description of this video if you want to learn more about Card Ladder, cardladder.com. You can't miss it. It's a great tool, and the inventor's right here on our channel, and I'm flattered. So thank you guys for watching. Keep collecting, stay positive in the hobby, and peace.